All right, we'll wing it.
Go for it.
Somebody in? All right.
You want to slide down, maybe? Yeah. Perfect.
All righty. Good to have everybody here. I'm FDLE Commissioner Mark Glass, and welcome to the Tampa Bay Regional Operational Center. I'm honored to be with Attorney General Ashley Moody here, and General Moody has been a strong advocate and proponent for law and order in this great state. And under her leadership, the Office of Statewide Prosecution has been a tremendous partner in the bringing to justice criminals like those we'll be discussing today. I'm also pleased to share the stage with Special Agent in Charge Mark Rootnell of the Tampa Bay Regional Operational Center. And this case we're going to talk about today has stretched across the borders of this state and beyond Tampa Bay. The investigation was spearheaded by the Tampa Bay office, and I'm tremendously proud of the work that everyone up here on the stage and the people here that work for Tampa Bay has been able to do for the great state. I want to say special thanks to Special Agent Ricardo Acevedo and Crime Intelligence Analyst Ms. Pena, Candace Pena. And also welcome Florida Highway Patrol Captain Heather Glennie and Public Affairs Officer Steve Gaskin, as well as the National Insurance Crime Bureau Director of Field Operations Charlie Warshman and Special Agent David Cecilia. Now, FDLE truly values the partnership we share with help root out our crime in our great state, and each of your agencies played a critical role in ensuring a successful outcome in this case. Now, we're here today to announce the arrest of 23 suspects in the operation, you want to fix that? Are we good? An operation Gone in 60 Days. Today marks the culmination of a 5-year investigation into a complex, multifaceted vehicle theft ring that resulted in the loss of more than $1.1 million. $1.1 million to victims. Yeah, we're good. Y'all good? Sorry about that.
Can you go over that one more time?
Okay. We'll do it again. So, 23 suspects were arrested in Operation Gone in 60 Days. And that resulted in $1.1 million that was to victims. So that's a huge case. And it took over 5 years to do that, to put that all together. So that's the reason why the great work of these analysts, these agents, the National Crime Bureau, Insurance Crime Bureau, everybody that was part of this case is and the statewide prosecutor. It just takes a while to go through that, but we were able to save a lot of money and actually put a lot of people in jail. Now, FDLE, this is what we do. FDLE, we do these multifaceted cases, multi-jurisdictional, but we can't do it without the Office of Statewide Prosecutor. They are the key people in this whole investigations. So I want to thank everybody here. I also want to introduce Special Agent in Charge Mark Rootnell. He's going to tell you a little bit more about the case. Mark?
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. Thank you. So we started this case in July of 2018. We had received some information that a group here in Tampa was trying to sell fraudulent commercial driver's license, CDLs. And in the midst of that investigation, as we were beginning to do our investigative steps, we realized that several of meetings that we had with some confidential sources targeting this group, they ended up driving lots of high-end vehicles with temporary tags. Every time we met with them, a different car showed up. Maseratis, BMWs, very high-end cars. So our keen investigators decided that's kind of strange, so they started running these temporary tags. And what we found out is why we're here today. So this was a very organized fraud. Several ways they conducted these frauds. There was three overarching ways they did this. The first one was our main target there, Rosmil Cruz. He would get online and look for high-end vehicles across Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, and he would target smaller dealerships. And he would actively look for high-end vehicles. And when he would find one, he would have some of his members of that group there waiting and able to go pick up the vehicle at a moment's notice. He would then send fraudulent checks to banks here in Tampa to cover the amount of the vehicle. Once the deal was consummated, within a couple hours, somebody from that group was picking up that vehicle and driving it back to Tampa. Well, ultimately, those checks they weren't good, obviously, so the funds were not there. It was too late. The car was already back here in Tampa. So what they would do then is they hired, or they used another one of our defendants, Marianne Hell, her last name, Marianne Hell from Miami. She worked at a car dealership in Miami. She would author a temporary tag for that vehicle. They would then also solicit the services of another individual on our org chart there, who was the mastermind of crafting counterfeit VIN numbers. Not just one, he would make sure that every VIN on that vehicle was, because there's several VINs on the vehicle, he was very good at that. So then they would drive the car for 60 days until the temporary tag was no longer valid. Then he would sell it. He'd sell the vehicle to friends, associates, somewhere here in Tampa, Fort Myers, Miami, and he would sell a stolen car that was probably valued at $100,000 for $15,000, $16,000. And that was on and on and on. The second type of scam they used was they would go and they would rent vehicles from airports, from other high-end rental facilities in the greater Tampa area and South Florida, and do the exact same thing. Bring the rental car back here, only this time they would file a stolen police report. Oh, my car has been stolen. But in the meantime, they've got the temporary tag, they had the new VIN numbers, and then they would sell the rental car. The third scam was they would legitimately buy high-end vehicles, and then they would just walk, they'd call it the giveaway. They'd give it 6 months, 7 months, then they would just decide, we're gonna walk away from this car, but it's quote-unquote stolen, same scenario, and then they would sell the cars again. They would get new identities through the VIN number, and so some unsuspecting people were buying these cars that they're not legit, they're stolen. They couldn't get any worse. Mr. Cruz then would, when he would sell these cars, he would ask these people, hey, do you need some car insurance? I can hook you up with that. I got a guy that sells car insurance. So these people would give him money, cash money, for their 6-month policy. He would go online, and he would craft his little policy, give them a nice little insurance card, and then after a month, they'd get a call from Geico saying, you don't have any car insurance. No, but I paid for 6 months. No, you didn't. He would pocket the money on that. So this was on for 5 years nonstop. We arrested him for other charges in 2020. And just to give you some depth of the mastermind that he is, in the 2020 arrest, when we seized his cell phone, we located over 76,000 pictures of driver's licenses, VIN numbers, vehicles, 76,000. This guy was a walking fraudulent cell phone, basically. So at the end of the day, he's going to be facing a litany of charges, thanks to General Moody's office of State Prosecution, FHP. NICB was a great partner in this case. They allowed us to purchase 2 vehicles. We did some undercover operations, and we purchased 2 cars ourselves to continue the investigation and to prove the fraud. So this group they just didn't stop. He didn't get the message in 2020 when we got him the first time. And our folks here continue to work the case and keep following other leads across the state. And with General Moody's Office of State Prosecution, we feel confident that he's going to get the message this time. He's facing lots of RICO charges. So good case, a lot of good teamwork. So with that, I'll hand it over to Attorney General Moody, who is a champion for law enforcement. We appreciate everything you do for us, Ashley. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Special Agent.
Hello, good morning, and thank you so much for being here with us today. It's an exciting morning because it is a demonstration of the power of collaboration. You'll see standing with me the Florida Highway Patrol, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, our statewide insurance fraud investigators, and even a nonprofit, the National Insurance Crime Bureau. The synergy when these folks came together to go after 27 individuals, and the types of charges you heard about, the creativity, the ingenuity, the types of fraud that were involved in this were so complex. So this is a wonderful morning because we are reporting back to Floridians and taxpayers who have vested in the people standing behind me and said, we trust you to go after these people in our state that are violating our laws and harming our citizens. And this morning's announcement is an example of the hard work, the dogged determination, and the expertise that is involved in going after complex fraud. And as you heard, this involved different types of schemes involving sales of automobiles. We cloned vehicles, switching of VIN identification, fraudulent title, fraudulent checks. I could go on and on. The schemes that were employed were designed to defraud Floridians, and I'm very proud of the work of those standing behind me and that of our statewide prosecutors. Now, the charges against the 27 individuals will span from racketeering, RICO, all the way to false stealing personal identification information, grand theft, and the maximum penalties will vary. But if you look at RICO and conspiracy to commit RICO, you're looking at first-degree felonies. I think the lead defendant will face a maximum, if the penalties were run consecutive, 135 years in prison. Why do we want Floridians to pay attention to this type of crime? We know from most recent studies, they show that vehicle theft in our nation is on the rise. In 1 year, some studies show it's increased 13% in 1 year. That's a lot for 1 year. And how can Floridians that are wanting to purchase a vehicle, how can they help in being on the lookout and trying to avoid this type of fraud? And as you can see, it was very complex. It involved different types of sales, it involved a dealership, it involved false identification numbers. So we want Floridians to be aware that this is happening, and of course, we'll keep working hard to go after these people that are trying to commit fraud in Florida, but we also want Floridians to be on the lookout for things that may be suspicious. And if you are purchasing a vehicle, whether that's a sale through a dealership or whether that's a private sale, we want you to be on the lookout for certain things. So if you are going to purchase a vehicle, what kind of things can you do? And will you catch it in every instance? Maybe not, but this will help you in being a little more certain that you're not falling prey to a fraud or a scheme. If you're doing a private sale, you can verify that the seller's name is on the title that they are going to transfer to you. Many times they'll send, in these schemes, they'll send somebody else to show up and try and sell you the vehicle. Confirm the identification of the seller and that it matches what's on the title. If you're at a dealer, ask for the dealer's license. Make sure they're a licensed dealer. Do your research before you buy a car. Make sure that the dealer is reputable. You can go online. Oftentimes you will be able to see if there are reports that someone has represented false vehicles or sold stolen vehicles. You can go to the Better Business Bureau and check out whether it's a reputable dealer. FDLE has a stolen vehicle database. If you type in Google search, FDLE stolen vehicle, it'll take you to that database. You can put in the VIN number. Now in this case, it wouldn't have caught it because you're using false identification numbers, cloned vehicles, things like that, but that is a search that someone could do. You can check that the VIN on the dash and the VIN number on the door match. There are two places that you can look for a VIN number, right on the dashboard and on the side of the door. You want to make sure that they match. Go to that door, VIN number. Try to peel that off. If it's false, it'll probably peel off pretty easy. If it's there from the manufacturer and it's the VIN number that was put on there and it's meant to be on that card, it's going to be really hard when you try to take it off and it'll probably break apart. That's a quick sign that that might be a false identification sticker. And finally, if it's a private sale, you can go to the DMV and do the transaction right there. Sign over the title, have the representative look at it. Many times those folks have worked there for decades and they can spot if there is a fraudulent title document. So these are just some ways that Floridians can protect themselves if they are going to buy a vehicle in Florida. Again, many times the schemes are so complex, it takes the folks standing behind me working in collaboration to take down these vast criminal enterprises, this organized fraud, and we're so proud of them this morning. But we always want to remind Floridians there are things that you can do as well to help us prevent vehicle fraud and vehicle sale fraud. And those are just a few ways you can do that. So thank you for being here this morning as we announce this important case. And I expect that this will just be one of the many that these folks standing behind me will bring back and announce as a result of their successful efforts.
Thank you guys for being here today. We appreciate it. We appreciate the support from our Attorney General and these agencies that you see lined up here. They've worked very hard for a long time here to get people off the street that should not be there. These kind of crimes cost every one of us a lot of money in the end, and especially things like the insurance issues that you've heard mentioned. Those are what you and I are paying more insurance for now because of people like this. So the support that we get from all these groups right here, it's a natural working environment for us with our resources, FDLE, and our other partners here. That's is so critical to get these kind of people off the street. Everything that the Attorney General just mentioned, take those extra steps. If the deal seems too good to be true, it probably is, okay? So take those extra steps and confirm things. If you have questions, reach out, Highway Patrol, FDLE, or your local tax collector's offices. Get that information, confirm it before you do something that's going to cost you down the road. Again, thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you. On behalf of the National Insurance Crime Bureau, the CEO, David Glowy, our Director of Public Affairs, Joseph Brenzick, and our Director in the Southeast Region, Charlie Warsham. My name is Special Agent Dave Sicilian. I'm assigned to the Tampa Bay region. Good morning. So NICB's role, as indicated earlier, that we provided buy money to undercovers to help further the investigation. We also did a lot of research. We gathered information, data, and we identified a number of stolen motor vehicles during the course of this investigation. We're proud to partner with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Florida Highway Patrol, Department of Insurance Fraud, the Attorney General's office, as we together join forces to protect the citizens of the state of Florida. So we are all committed to preventing vehicle theft, and we would like to thank the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for recognizing us today, and we look forward to continuing to protect the citizens of the state and also against fraud and theft. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, guys. With that, we'll take some questions if you have any for anybody up
So
here.
to clarify the numbers, I see 25 people pictured here, 23 have been arrested, I see 2 wanted, and then Ashley Moody said 27. So can you clarify how many people are charged, how many are arrested?
There'll be 27 charged, 23 have been arrested. We have 2 outstanding warrants right now.
Okay.
About how much of a prison sentence would they get if convicted these days?
It has to do with the charges that they have, if they have any prior convictions. I'm sure the general could speak to that, but like she mentioned earlier, some of these charges carry felony 1, that's maximum 30 years. So a lot of it depends on their criminal histories and their charges that they have today.
What happened to all these people who bought these vehicles not knowing that they were stolen? Did they have to give the cars back, or are they basically SOL?
Some of them did, but some of them are charged. When you meet a guy in a Circle K parking lot on a Sunday with $13,000 cash and no bill of sale, no title, it's a clue. One of these individuals, during our research, had over 159 cars registered to him in a 10-year period. So, yes, we did charge some, but some were very surprised and upset, and oh my God, so yes, we had to take the car back.
What makes the world of cars and car sales and insurance and all these other things that have lots of paperwork, what makes it so attractive to somebody who is trying to pull one over on someone buying a car, pull one over on an insurance company?
I think because there's so many layers of failure. I mean, we've all bought a car in our lifetime. It takes all day to buy a car, and that's because of people like this. And I think because there's so many different aspects to it and different paperworks and this title, that sale, all the paperwork involved gives these fraudsters every opportunity to create new paperwork.
And when they were forging these VIN numbers, the VIN numbers were just essentially made-up numbers. They weren't going anywhere, right? It was just a number, so when you looked it up, you couldn't
Correct.
find it in a database.
Correct. And an individual that did that had a history of doing that. So this was not his first time in this arena.
So if the Florida Highway Patrol pulled over one of these cars that was purchased for a low price, would they know immediately that the VIN number was wrong and that it was all a fake?
Not at first, no sir. They'd have to do their due diligence, which they do. And to the general's point, there is 2 very visible VINs, but there's also several more in a car that we can't disclose where they are, but there's several other ones in a car.
And I'm hearing and I anticipated that the question would be, if I am watching this broadcast and I'm hearing about this complex scheme and a very complex transaction, one of the most complex transactions that someone will undertake, buying a car. Many people don't understand all of the documents that are put in front of them to sign. There are so many. I have often thought that when I have gone in to try and secure a car. And so That is why we came up with a short list of things that you can do, especially if you're undertaking a private sale. But one of the things that was true in this case and will be true if there's a suspicious, usually if there's a suspicious transaction, and that is a price that is too good to be true. In this case, in many instances, they would say, oh, well, you know, they have this car and they can sell it quickly and it's a lot cheaper, you can get it anywhere else. Pay attention if there are excuses for that. My aunt is very sick and she has to sell her car immediately to get money to help buy her health care, and she needs cash. So if somebody's asking for cash, if somebody says they want to sell you a car and it's a lot cheaper than you could get on the marketplace, and these days, being able to research what is a fair price for a car has never been easier. So in addition to researching who's selling you the car, demanding that their name is on the title, that the person that is transferring that title is present, and researching whether a price is too good to be true, those are some easy things consumers can do that will raise suspicions if something's just not right.
How did this first come to your guys' office? Because this was 5 years in the making, I understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what was the initial tip that you had received?
Like I said earlier, we got a tip that there was a group in Tampa that was selling counterfeit CDL driver's licenses, and then it morphed into that. Ultimately, we never bought any counterfeit CDLs. I guess they weren't doing that. So in the course of, I'm surprised they weren't, but in the course of our investigation on that, we turned into the vehicle theft ring.
Can you just describe what makes an investigation take 5 years and how you begin to unravel something like this that, now looking back on it, it seems all obvious, but pulling it apart as a criminal.
Well, a couple of things. There was so many different layers of this. We have 3 rungs of the organization, and as the general mentioned, lots of paperwork, different circuits all over the state of Florida. And unfortunately for us, this was also in the midst of COVID. So it made things very difficult for us to do certain law enforcement activities. And it's just that the documentation is voluminous with this. Lots of interviews, a lot of travel. And we wanted to, so that's why we arrested him in 2020 to start the case going. It took us, after that, almost 3 years as we sit here today, to build an even better case.
How many people did you interview?
Oh.
Hundreds?
Yeah, I can tell you, our folks here have spent over 12,000 man-hours on this case.
How big is the case file? Like folders and folders?
It's probably pretty big, yeah. Ace, how big is the case file?
700 reports.
700 investigative reports. Yep.
For the state of Florida on an annual basis, what does this cost the consumer, like on the percentage of their premium? What are we paying for people like this? Does anybody have a figure?
I don't know if you can quantify that, but I would say it definitely impacts the citizens of Florida. I mean, all those cars that they sold, we didn't get any of that money for that, for taxes and things of that nature. So yeah, the victims are Florida citizens, insurance companies, rental car companies. Any other questions?
Thank you. We'll be pushing out a news release shortly with the graphic.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.